This is the Samsung Galaxy XR, and it's a device that's been hyped up a lot, not just by Samsung, but also Google pushing Android XR and Gemini AI as this next step in computing. On paper, it sounds ambitious. You've got dual 4K Micro-OLED displays, eye tracking, a dedicated depth sensor for mixed reality, and a system that's supposed to bring Android apps and AI into one spatial experience. After using it for a while, I think this is one of the most interesting XR headsets right now, but at the same time, it still feels surprisingly early. And at $1,800, it sits in a very strange spot, because it's much cheaper than something like the Apple Vision Pro, but also far more expensive than something like the Quest 3. So the question is this actually worth it? Well, I'm Kaz, I've been reviewing VR headsets for almost a decade now, and I bought this myself to test it properly for this channel. So in this video, I'll walk you through everything you need to know if you're thinking about buying it. Subscribe because it helps us keep doing what we're doing. Before we go deeper, it's important to understand what Samsung is actually trying to build here, because if you look at this like a traditional gaming-first VR headset, you're going to misunderstand a lot of it. This is much more focused on mixed reality, Android apps, virtual screens, and AI, not just immersive VR. And you can already see that in what you get in the box. There are no controllers included. You can buy them separately, but out of the box, everything is built around eye tracking and hand gestures. So instead of a gaming-first headset like Quest, this leans much more into that spatial computer idea. But at the same time, it's not exactly a Vision Pro either, it kind of sits in between. And that's important because it explains a lot what this headset does really well and where it still feels a bit underdeveloped. The headset does look good though. You've got this clean glass front, which feels solid, definitely like a high-end device, and there is no front display showing your eyes like on Vision Pro, which I know some people hated, although I thought it was kind of cool. Slightly uncanny, yes, but cool. Now, if you wear it like this, with the sides open and the nose cap open, it almost blends the pass-through with your real surroundings. It even feels like your field of view opens up a bit. Plus, you get airflow, so it doesn't get as sweaty. It just feels more relaxed. But if you want immersion, you can attach these light shields. They snap on magnetically, so you can even easily do it while wearing the headset, which is nice. This gives you a much more close-off VR feel. And I actually like that you can switch between those two modes depending on what you're doing. It's a little funny because this is kind of what the Quest Pro tried, and that failed miserably. But it finally makes sense now. I'm using the forehead cushion so my eyes sit closer to the display. If you need more space, you can swap in the included adjusters. There's a slim and a thicker one, especially useful if you're wearing glasses. Even with the slim one, there's enough room. Just be careful not to scratch the lenses. If you wear glasses a lot, inserts are probably the better option. Now, like the Vision Pro, there's an external battery pack. It helps keep the headset lighter, which is good, but it also means you're always dealing with a cable, which makes it feel less clean than something like a Quest. Now, when you put it on, the first impression is pretty positive. The halo strap balances the weight well, especially if you position it properly at the back of your head. It just doesn't feel as front heavy as some other headsets, and overall it's seemingly comfortable out of the box. But that changes once you try to get the best image quality, because to get the clearest image and the full field of view, you need to tighten it. And when you do that, most of the pressure ends up on your forehead. At first, it's fine, but after a while, you really start to feel it. And eventually, it gets really uncomfortable enough that you just want to kinda throw it off. And then there's one design choice I really don't understand. The strap isn't removable. So if this doesn't fit your head well, you can't just swap it out like you can on something like Quest. And since comfort is so personal, that's a pretty big limitation. I've already seen people adding extra straps on top or even cutting this off completely just to make it more comfortable, which kind of says enough. But once you've got it sitting right on your face, this is honestly one of the best part of the headset. Like I said, you've got dual 4K Micro-OLED displays, and yeah, you notice that immediately. Text is easy to read without effort. Watching movies actually feels more cinematic because of those deep blacks. Colors look right too. Nothing looks off or washed out. It's just solid. It goes up to 90 Hz, which is fine, not amazing, but I never really felt limited by it. And the field of view isn't huge, but because the image is this sharp, it doesn't bother me as much as I expected. But optics-wise, it's not perfect. The sweet spot is pretty small. If your eyes aren't right in the center, you start to see blur and a drop in brightness toward the edges, almost like a soft vignette. And if you try to look around with just your eyes instead of moving your head, the edges don't stay sharp either. But when you are in that sweet spot, it does look really good. The headset uses eye tracking with foveated rendering, so whatever you're looking at stays sharp while everything around it drops off a bit to save performance intentionally. And it works system-wide. Menus, apps, even in PCVR, so the edges are still blurry, but because your focus stays sharp like this, you just notice it less. And then there's Passthrough, which is the other big highlight of this headset. You've got two high-resolution cameras combined with a dedicated depth sensor, and that really makes a difference. It's still not perfect. The image is a bit grainy, colors are slightly darker than real life, and in low light, it's get noisy pretty quickly, similar to other headsets. But what they did really well is how natural it feels. So if I reach for something in Passthrough, I don't have to think about it. My hand lines up properly, depth feels right, and walking around just feels comfortable. Latency is also very low. The delay between movement and what you see is so small that you barely notice it. That said, it's also not flawless. When things move, you definitely see more blur or a bit of ghosting. Compared to other headsets, I'd say it's sharper than Quest 3 and honestly even sharper than Vision Pro, but Vision Pro looks cleaner overall because it seems to soften the image more, while Samsung keeps more detail at the cost of visible grain. So overall, this is one of the strongest display and pass-through combinations I've used so far, but it also sets the tone for the whole headset. Really strong hardware with trade-offs you can't really ignore. Now, all of this sounds great for mixed reality and apps, right? But this is still a VR headset, so you might be wondering, what is it actually like to play on this? So I tested both standalone and PCVR streaming, including with the optional controllers. But before getting into that, let me show you one of the games I've been playing on this. This segment is sponsored by LDLC VR Studio. Thanks for supporting the channel. So I've been playing their Tavern's Takedown, which literally just came out, and it's way more fun than it looks at first. It's basically a chaotic tavern brawler in VR, but in this really colorful, almost cute fantasy world. So you're throwing mugs, smashing chairs, and dodging punches. It turns into complete chaos really fast. But what surprised me is that it's not just mindless fighting. There's actually more depth here than you would expect, because you get different abilities, weird power-ups like shrinking or turning giant, and suddenly the fights play out very differently. Also, it's kind of a sneaky workout. You don't really notice it at first, but after a few fights, you definitely feel it. So if you like physics-based combat with a bit more variety and personality, this one's worth checking out. So, especially with PCVR, this is where things start to look really good. I've been using Virtual Desktop, which usually gives me the best results. And from what I heard, PCVR streaming wasn't great at launch, but it seems like they've improved it quite a bit since then, because now it actually looks really impressive. You can even use dynamic foveated streaming using the headset's eye tracking in Virtual Desktop, which helps with performance. Visually, this is where those Micro-OLED displays really pay off. You start to noticing detail you would normally miss. But pretty quickly, you also notice this isn't what the headset is built around. On the standalone side, there are already VR games on the Play Store, but from what I've tested, there's a clear focus on hand tracking. For example, I tried Demio, and that only worked with hand tracking. Here, no controller support at all, even though it does work on other headsets. So based on that, it does feel like a Google or a Samsung is leaning in that direction. The good part is that hand tracking works well, it's responsive, it tracks reliably, but it just doesn't feel like a traditional VR setup. If you do want that, you will need the controllers. And those are sold separately for around $250, which is a lot. The controllers themselves are actually pretty nice though. They've got a more rounded design, the materials feel soft, and they're comfortable to hold, even if they can feel a bit slippery. The layout is standard, nothing surprising, but the battery system is a bit different. You press a button, slide it out, insert an AA battery, and then you can just push it back in, like loading a magazine. Haptics are fine, not the strongest, but you do get some feedback in the trigger, which is a nice touch. Where things fall a bit short is controller tracking. In front of you, everything works well. I didn't notice jitter or drift, but once your hands go behind your head or out of view, tracking can drop. And that becomes noticeable in games where you need precision. Even in Terran's Takedown, throwing objects felt less reliable. There's also some controller latency. I notice it most in Beat Saber, which is kind of a heavy stress test for this. But I can still play expert, but I do miss notes I normally wouldn't. In most other games, it's less obvious, so it's usable, just not the most precise setup. So yes, you can game on it, but the more I use it, the more it felt like VR was added to the headset, not built around it. So then if it's not VR, what is this thing really about? For me, it's really the day-to-day use, the spatial computer side of it. If you ever used an Android phone, this will feel very familiar. You've got your usual settings, notifications, and even side-loading if you want. It just makes the whole thing very easy to get into. And having access to the Google Play Store is honestly a big deal, because I immediately started downloading apps I already use, work stuff, Discord, YouTube, and that last one is especially nice because you finally get a native YouTube app that just works. No weird workarounds needed like on Vision Pro. So pretty quickly, it started to feel like this could actually be my portable work and entertainment setup. And the way you control everything is pretty straightforward. You look at something, it gets highlighted, and you can confirm with a pinch. Now, it's not as fast or precise as Vision Pro, but for navigating, it works well. And if the eye tracking misses, you can actually use your hands, because if you do this, it switches to a pointer that follows your hand almost like a mouse, which makes it easy to correct. That combination works really well in practice. I also connected a Bluetooth keyboard and ended up working in this for about a week, writing, browsing, replying to messages. That all felt surprisingly natural. I even opened something like Genshin Impact, which is a regular flat mobile game, and it just worked. Because it launches in touchscreen mode, you can just use your eye and hand tracking to interact with it right away, which surprisingly works pretty well. And if you want, you can connect an Xbox controller as well. That's something this headset does really well. It's just flexible. That alone already feels like a step up over Quest, and even compared to Vision Pro, I actually felt more free to just use native apps instead of relying on another device. Now, once you start pushing it a bit more, you do run into some limitations. You can open multiple apps, move windows around, resize them, and there's even a tidy up feature that organizes everything for you. But it caps out at 3 windows, which honestly feels a bit restrictive. And then there's app scaling. A lot of apps actually scale really well in here, which is great for productivity. But since the Play Store is so big, you will run into some apps that behave more like phone apps. So even if you make that window bigger, you're not gonna get more usable space. It just becomes a larger version of the same thing. And at that point, you start to realize this is still just Android. You don't have access to full desktop apps here. So in standalone modes, it's not replacing your full monitor setup yet. If you do want that, you can connect to your PC and mirror your desktop. I've been using Virtual Desktop for that, but Google also has their own app now called PC Connect. The nice thing about PC Connect is that your PC shows up as just another window, so you can still use other native apps around it at the same time. It basically feels like a multi-monitor setup. And there's one part I didn't expect at all. Your PC mouse actually works across everything. I could move my mouse from my PC straight into my standalone apps and then back again. That kind of integration already working here was honestly pretty surprising. But it's still in beta, so it's buggy, limited, and you don't have much control yet. Virtual Desktop gives you more customization, but it takes over your entire view. It becomes like a full screen app, so you can't mix it with standalone apps. On Vision Pro, your Mac feels completely part of the system. Here, it's not quite there yet. but I was genuinely surprised to see this level of integration with Windows already. There are a few smaller things worth mentioning. Travel mode is great. It stabilizes tracking in planes and trains, which honestly should be a standard on every headset. But the Guardian system is a bit of a weird one. It automatically creates a circular boundary around you, but you can't really shape it to your room like you can on Quest. So depending on your space, that can feel limiting and sometimes even a bit unsafe. So for lighter tasks, especially on the go, this actually works really well, but the more you try to rely on it, the more those limitations start to show. And then there's the AI side of things. Samsung and Google have been pushing Gemini pretty hard here, and I get why, because when it works, it's actually really interesting. You can share your screen with it, talk about what you're seeing, ask questions, and it responds in a very natural way. And you can use it in Passthrough, but also on your virtual screens or in VR. And at times, it almost feels like you've got someone there with you reacting to what you're doing. The first time I experienced that, it genuinely felt like a wow moment. I actually found myself just talking to it for a while, which is either a sign of the future or a sign that I work too much from home. But it's not as powerful as it sounds. It works well within some Google apps. For example, if you're looking at something that looks like a place, it can recognize it and take you straight into Google Maps and find that area for you. Stuff like that is actually pretty cool. But beyond that, it doesn't really act like a true agent across the system. You can't just tell it to add something to your calendar or move things between apps in a meaningful way. So it's useful, but still more limited than I was hoping for, especially with how much it was hyped. I also tried Likeness, which is Google's version of realistic avatars, kind of like Vision Pro's personas. Setting it up was a bit annoying though. You need an Android phone to scan your face. On Vision Pro, you can do it with the headset. And I use an iPhone, so I had to borrow Cherry's Google Pixel 10 Pro to set it up. And it works, but compared to personas, it definitely feels less advanced. You don't get the same level of micro expressions, no tongue sticking out, and features like Apple's spatial personas aren't here either. But overall, it still looks pretty good and your hands show up here as well, which is nice. There are some smaller features that I do like. Circle to search works really well, although you do feel it a bit in performance sometimes. But it's cool that you can highlight anything you see, whether it's in Passthrough or on a virtual screen, and instantly get information or translations. Like I tried it in Half-Life Alyx, where I saw some Russian texts that I couldn't read, so it translated it right on the spot, which is either useful or the beginning of me cheating in puzzle games. Samsung is also testing things like hand occlusion, where your hands appear in front of virtual objects. It's not as polished as on Vision Pro, but it's there. And there's iris recognition, which works, but it's noticeably slower than what Apple is doing. So locking in with your eyes takes a couple of seconds, which you do feel. So with all of this, it does feel like a glimpse of where this is going, just not something you can fully rely on yet. In terms of tracking, I didn't run into major issues. Very occasionally, especially in low light, it can lose tracking for a moment, but it recovers quickly. What stood out more is how stable everything feels, like virtual windows don't drift, objects stay in place, which is important. Hand tracking has improved a lot since I tried this last year. It even works when your hands are resting on your lap, which is nice, but it's not perfect. In low light, it can be inconsistent. Sometimes it works great, other times it struggles. It definitely prefers brighter environments. Performance-wise, it's actually pretty well optimized. I could have around 5 apps open at the same time, sometimes more, and if it gets too heavy, it just minimizes one automatically instead of closing it. So when you jump back in, it loads almost instantly. You just open the multitasking view, tap the app, and you're right back where you left off. Overall, it just feels smoother than Quest, but not quite as capable as Vision Pro when it comes to heavier multitasking. And then there's the audio. I was actually surprised here. These speakers sound fuller than most VR headsets. You still don't get that deep bass like with headphones, but there's more body and depth than I expected. As for the microphone, I think it sounds pretty decent, but judge for yourself. This is what the Samsung Galaxy XR microphone sounds like. Please don't forget to give this video a like if you like it so far, and also subscribe if you never want to miss out on any VR news or VR reviews. Let me know what you think. So, Is the Samsung Galaxy XR worth $1,800? Well, this is the first headset where Android actually makes sense in XR. The display is gorgeous, Passthrough is solid, and having real Play Store apps makes this feel like something you can actually use day to day. But the moment you push it harder, the limits show up. The AI is overhyped, comfort gets rough, linking your PC is a bit early, and the whole system just feels a bit disconnected. The potential is there, but it's just still early. If your priority is virtual screens first and PCVR second though, and budget isn't your main concern, this is a really strong alternative to what Vision Pro is trying to do at a much lower price. If your priority is VR gaming, Quest 3 is still the better buy. And compared to Vision Pro, it is simple. Samsung gives you openness and flexibility. Apple gives you polish and integration. So this feels like a first generation product in the best and worst ways. The hardware is already there. The software still needs time. And we have to wait and see if Samsung and Google keep pushing this, but if they do, this could become something really special. So what about you? Is this the headset you've been waiting for, or are you holding out for the next generation? Let me know.